There is much fanfare surrounding the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, which is NASA, Artemis 3 project, which boasts that it will land the first woman and the first person of color on the moon within the next 2 years. The mission depends on the success of centibillionaire Elon Musk's super rocket, the SpaceX Starship, designed to ferry our astronauts from lunar orbit to the moon's surface. In 2021, SpaceX won a $2.89 billion contract with NASA to develop the super rocket. So far, its performance has been lacking. In 2023, the rocket's unsuccessful explosive launch spewed brown grime and dust onto populated areas in Texas' Boca Chica area, which Musk calls, quote, a wasteland. The blasts are destroying the fragile surrounding ecostructure replete with endangered species. In March of 2025, their super rocket again exploded, spewing debris on the Bahamas and temporarily grounding flights at Florida's airports. Several months later, Starship finally achieved a largely successful test flight, but Artemis 3 is still behind schedule, now expected to launch no earlier than 2028. The China National Space Administration, meanwhile, has already successfully tested a lunar landing. They're way ahead of us. What is this really all about? The United States is hell-bent on building mining stations on the moon before China does because of another kind of dust, moondust, replete with helium-3, touted to be the fuel for an emerging technology that will provide clean, abundant energy. In 2021, Beijing's Research Institute of Uranium Geology announced that China's lunar Chang'e 5 mission had identified this precious mineral on the moon. Helium-3 fusion technology promises to produce clean energy, nuclear energy without radioactive waste. Imagine. Fossil fuel and even current nuclear power plant technology would become completely obsolete. Staff workers with the return capsule of Chang'e 5 probe in, I'm going to pronounce things wrong, Siziwang Banner, North China, Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region, on December 17, 2020. That's the picture of them celebrating. The lander unfurled the first Chinese flag on the moon. And just to be clear, this is on Earth. The lander was on the moon and unfurled the project, and then the lander came back, and they're celebrating the return. And they brought back helium-3. The Hills analysis describes the crystal mineral sample returned by the Chang'e probe as exceedingly tiny, about 1/10 the size of a human hair. The helium-3 that it contains has the potential to change the world.
Amazing.
Wow.
3 space missions bringing back helium-3 rich moon dust would provide the entire planet with energy for a year. That's from China Daily. One cargo payload, about 25 tons on a space shuttle, would power the entire United States for a year, representing a value, and this is why the United States is so interested in it, of about $3 billion a ton. The Hill wrote, "The country that corners the moon mining market of helium-3 will control, in essence, the Earth. The moon could become the Persian Gulf of the mid to late 21st century. Clean and abundant fusion energy would change the world in a way that can barely be evaluated." And this is a drawing of what China's moon base would look like. China, along with Russia, plans to complete construction of a lunar base by 2035. Then it will mine helium-3 rich crystal, chain site Y, which is contained in vast quantities on the moon's regolith, which is the layer of unconsolidated rocky material covering the bedrock. It's all over the place. When they landed on the moon way back, they stepped on this moondust, which is the helium-3. That's what they were stepping on. Since China has accelerated plans for lunar exploration and future mining, the panicked imperialist countries, particularly the U.S., cannot sit by and just watch. They are horrified at the possibility that China could be the first country to gather the moon dust that contains helium-3. If they lose this space race, imperialist governments and corporations will lose the opportunity to corner the multi-billion-dollar market for this potentially planet-saving technology and sell it for a profit. The ultimate value, of course, is mammoth profit for the U.S., its imperialist allies, and its private companies if they control the mining, transporting, the mining, transporting, and fusion process of helium-3. Given the fragile condition of Western economics, it's a space race the imperialists cannot afford to lose. The Washington Examiner, a right-wing U.S. news outlet, attacked China in 2023 with the fabricated, ominous statement, quote, "If the West turns away from space, China, which cares little for human rights, right, will forge ahead. A Chinese-dominated space frontier is not a future that anyone would want," unquote. Actually, it is clear that a Chinese-dominated space frontier is a future that everybody should want. If our planet is to survive the climate disaster, it is imperative that the imperialists lose the race to the moon. Far from seeking to profit, China's approach to international energy production is in fact geared towards protecting the planet. And as many people here and people in this panel are going to point out, they're not doing it for profit, they're doing it to make sure everybody has electricity and everything they need. Socialist China's international humanitarian policies are aimed at saving the globe from climate catastrophe, not reaping profit. While corporations scheme to gain riches, the Pentagon's militarization of space is intensifying to protect capitalist interests and uphold U.S. domination. And you remember a few years ago we got this Space Force. The establishment of the Space Force sent a clear warning to Russia, China, Iran, and any other countries that the U.S. views as global competitors, informing them that imperialist U.S. is staking its claim to supremacy over space technology and over outer space itself. Billions of taxpayers' dollars sorely needed for the health and welfare of human beings worldwide are funneled into these corporate or militarized space programs instead. As usual, as exciting and as visionary the exploration of space appears to be, capitalists manipulate scientific curiosity and discovery into profit-making ventures. So that's part of this chapter. What I didn't cover, and you have to read the book, is Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin versus Elon Musk's SpaceX rocket. The Artemis Accords, which is a sleight of hand. China's other projects to combat climate catastrophe. The Big Beautiful Bill and funding NASA, because they wanted to unfund it, and then people said, uh-oh, wait a minute, what about China? Imperialist media lies about China and its motives, and Musk's eyes on Mars, and maybe you know or don't know, Musk's plan ultimately is to bring people to Mars, but before they get there, he wants to drop A-bombs on Mars in order to make the climate habitable. Can you believe it? And finally, what will happen to our beautiful natural satellite when it's mined? I bet everybody's wondering about that. Not to mention what will happen to the miners. We know what people do to miners. China is already addressing this issue. You have to stay tuned. That's an article yet to be written. Thank you.